upon a time, there was a difference between what was the definition of a word and what is the meaning of a word, the way that people think about it when they hear the word. Nowadays, that is still the case, unfortunately. So I think that there is a very big difference often in the way that the definition is in a way of what is the definition of a word, like the literal dictionary definition, in contrast with what is the idea and the image, the social meaning of a word that people have when they think about a word. And this is quite problematic when you are trying to communicate, and when one person is being very literal and the other person has a whole different image in their mind. It is also problematic when two people are trying to communicate about one thing, but they have different images, they have different social meanings, on whatever they're talking about. So I think it's good to be aware of this. And I do have some examples that I think are pretty notable, where you have a definition and then you have a meaning and they are very different. Usually there is overlap, but they are often very different. One example is the word relationship. The literal definition of a relationship is simply the state of two things being connected. The way that two things are connected to each other, which doesn't even have to be about people, but it can be about trees as well, or about pieces of software. But it can also be about people, whether they are friendly or romantic, or even if they do not know each other at all. That is still a relationship. Their relationship is a very distant and non-knowing one. That is your relationship to most people in the world. And that still is a relationship. But the thing is, the social meaning of a relationship is something very different. It's significant. It's a romantic relationship. When you say I have a relationship with someone, you're not stating like, oh, we are connected in some way or shape or form. No, you are saying we have romantic feelings, and that's the problem with the social meaning, that it's often not clearly defined. The way that we think about a relationship is through patterns that we see in media, through things that we read, and through stories that we hear from others. But there's no real dictionary that you can go to and see what is the exact social meaning of a relationship. I suppose Urban Dictionary would do well, but I don't think it catches all the connotations of the social meanings either. For instance, the social meaning of a relationship is usually that there are two people and they have a romantic feelings for each other. It often also means that they are having sexual relationship. It also often means that they are exclusive with each other. This exclusivity means that they do not want the other person to have any sort of romantic feelings for anybody else. And this is very different from the literal definition that just says the state in which two things are connected. So, communication 101. Another example is drugs. This is one that has bothered me a lot in the past, because the literal definition of a drug is any substance that you ingest which has a psychoactive effect on you, meaning it has an effect on the way that you are feeling. It changes your mood in something, and it can be any sort of substance. The social meaning, however, is that a drug is a very bad substance, a harmful substance, an addictive substance, that makes you feel really great and then ruins your life and is very stigmatized. And among the social meaning of drugs, there are certain ones that pop out: heroin, cocaine, weed maybe. That's also considered to be a drug, and psychedelics, and what other thing do people take? Opiates. But the problem is that if you just look at the meaning of what a drug is, of being a substance that alters your mind, then many more things are also drugs, and drugs do not necessarily have to be good or bad. Because then caffeine is also a drug, and alcohol is also a drug, and nicotine is also a drug. And people kind of know these things, but then still there is no stigma around it, which is weird because you are talking about drugs, about things that change your mind. So when I understand these things, I'm like, just be freaking consistent. Either you hate drugs, so you don't take anything that changes your mind, or you're okay with drugs, but then you don't stigmatize anything that changes your mind. But it's never the way. People are always like, no, I hate drugs. Drugs are bad, they're addictive, they're harmful. But I do drink 10 cups of coffee a day. And then I unwind with 5 shots of vodka. But those are not drugs. So I'm like, either just embrace all of them, or reject all of them. But not as, like, I mean, what are you? Are you like a remnant of the war against drugs propaganda from 50 years ago? It doesn't make sense. I have another example, but what was it? Oh yeah, man and woman. There's also a very big difference between what is the literal definition of a man or a woman, and what is the social meaning of a man or of a woman, which has been especially a large cultural debate over the last 10 years. Which makes it a great example because people attach so many meanings to what it means to be a man or a woman. Nobody cares to look at the definition. And it causes so much miscommunication because, people will say, no, that is a man, that is a woman, and then someone else will argue with them even though they have a completely different idea, and then they're going to argue about which social meaning is the correct one, even though they're both false, because you should just speak in definitions, not in whatever image your ideology likes to believe. But let's break it down. I haven't looked at the exact definition of what is a man and what is a woman, but I imagine it's something like someone who's born with male genitals or the female genitals. That's it. That's just the definition. And then there's the social meaning, which people attach so much emotions to and so much value to. And the social meaning of a man is someone who works a bunch, who is not very receptive necessarily, someone who has to prove its worth, someone who likes to achieve things, someone who likes to build things and create things, those kind of things. And of a woman, it's someone who tends to be more social, someone who tends to be more empathetic and caring, and affectionate, usually. And I think it would be really great if people made this distinction between what is the definition of something versus what is the social meaning of something. And it's especially useless if you start arguing about which social meaning is the correct one. Well, another example I come up with is a criminal. We have the literal definition of a criminal is someone who did not follow the law, any law. But then the social meaning of a criminal is someone who's very bad, someone who is condemned, stigmatized, they are a threat to society, they are terrible, and blah 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 blah. It's again a very stigmatized term. And I think this is kind of wrong too, because there are a lot of criminals, according to the literal definition of criminal, someone who broke the law, who are never seen as criminals, who are treated like good people. I am sure that there are a lot of very powerful, influential people with great reputations that have broken the law. Perhaps most of them have. Maybe all of them. Well, I'm not going to assume all of them, but I mean, is there anyone who has never broken a law at all? Does a non-criminal even exist? There are so many laws. Even if you think you've been living fine, like you might have done something accidentally which goes against the law and you're therefore a criminal. And my whole point is, my problem is that with these terms getting stigmatized is that you assign so much value to a definition without thinking through what it means. Because if you could really be consistent in, for example, this idea of the criminals, or someone who broke the law is therefore bad and should be stigmatized, then everyone who broke the law, depending on to the extent to which they broke the law and how bad their crimes were, but then they should all be stigmatized. Not just someone who happened to break a law that was very socially unaccepted, but still very harmless. An example, like someone, if you walk around in the wrong part of the world with a bag of weed, you can be condemned to be a criminal. At the same time, if you walk around in the same part of the world and you launder like 10 millions of dollars and it causes hundreds of families to go absolutely bankrupt and have miserable lives, then who has done the worst thing? It's obviously If you look at the consequences, it's the money launderer. It's those people who have these, who do these actions and who make these decisions that impact a lot of people very negatively. But in our social sphere, that's, I don't know, it seems kind of out of reach. People don't think about it. We just think about the guy with a bag of weed, or the guy who stole a meal because he was hungry. In my opinion, we need to think things through. It's my crazy thoughts for today. Farewell. I'm off. Goodbye.